What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are having a good Wednesday. And I want to talk about a couple of things today. I want to talk about a couple things in this video. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, click the bell, become a channel member, $2 a month. Check out my latest video over on Bleacher Report. I want to talk a little bit about Clint Kubiak, and I want to talk about what kind of an offensive coordinator he really is. What kind of a play caller is he really? And after doing a little bit of research, after seeing this tweet, I found myself a little bit surprised by what I found here. So, one of the hot topics of conversation around the Seahawks over the first two games of the season, and understand, we're talking about the first two games of the season. I don't want to say that we need to draw any sweeping conclusions yet. But I want to take a look at this chart here that put together by Ian Hartitz of X here. He's somebody who's has a lot of fun putting together data like this. And this chart he put together, I believe, what was this? Earlier this morning. It basically charts offensive performance on two planes. One is explosiveness, and the other is consistency. So just to quickly run it down here, the x-axis here is explosive play rate. Basically, how often your team has an explosive play offensively. Now, what is an explosive play? It kind of depends on who you ask, but the general definition these days is a pass play of 15 or more yards or a run play of 10 or more yards. So, basically, it's a big play. What percentage of your plays are big? And then you have the y-axis here is success rate. Success rate is basically what percentage of your plays are successful. And success is determined by the yards gained compared to the down and distance, right? You can gain 18 yards on a play, but if it was 4th and 25, then gaining 18 yards doesn't do that much for you compared to another play where maybe it's 1st and 10 and you get 18 yards. Or 3rd and 16 and you get 18 yards, that is much more successful. So success rate is a little bit more difficult to determine. It's not exactly flat. It's not something that can easily be determined. But basically this chart pits those two numbers against each other. And the thing that really stands out for the Seahawks, because you can see them right here, over on the right side, you've got only two teams that have been more explosive than the Seahawks so far this year. The Seahawks have about a 15% explosive rate. Only two teams are ahead of that. Ravens and Rams are both a little over 16%. The Seahawks are at 15%. The only teams that are close, or the closest teams, are still sub 14%. You got the Jets, you got the Packers, you got the Texans, which that's kind of surprising, right? And this is not exactly what I thought this offense was going to be, because the flip side of that, and I'm not here to suggest that this is anything super troubling, but the success rate for the Seahawks has actually been approximately average, maybe a little below average, because you can see that if you go by the y-axis, the Seahawks are right at about 0.5, so they're right around halfway. And you can see that there are about as many teams ahead of them here than there are behind them. So they have been very explosive, but they have been mediocre at best with consistency. I'll tell you what's not mediocre, though, is Sleeper. Let's talk about them for a minute. Before I go any further into this, I want to tell you a little bit about my friends over at Sleeper. Have you heard about the Sleeper app? It is the best way to experience and connect over sports together with other users. It's a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. Go download the app now. You can celebrate and chat on games in real time with others. You can get the fastest scores, news, and alerts, all that right at your fingertips. And of course, you can play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So you can enjoy sports the way they were meant to be, together. Download the #1 sports app today. And when you go, use promo code SBN, that is SBN, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. So check out Sleeper today. Don't forget promo code SBN. All right, welcome back. So that's basically the story of the Seahawks offense so far this season. They've been very explosive, but they have been relatively inconsistent, or at the very least average in the world of consistency. I'd say a little more inconsistent than consistent. And I don't know about you guys, but that was not really what I was expecting the offense to be this year. I was expecting something along the lines of less explosives, but more consistency. Because just thinking about the way this offense was pitched to people, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, 2 tight ends, not a lot of receiver stuff. JSN, more of a possession receiver. Cooper Kupp, especially at his older age, more of a possession receiver. This was not a setup that I imagined was going to produce a very explosive and somewhat inconsistent offense. So far, though, that is what we have. And this inspired me to look back at Kubiak's previous couple of stops. And we don't have a lot of data to go on here, but I did manage to dig up a few things. Got this from the San Francisco Data Niners X account here. This is explosive play rates for 2024. They're defining explosive plays a little bit more stringently than most other places, but the rate compared to other teams should still be relatively similar. So this was Kubiak with the Saints in 2024, explosive play rate. And understand, think about the Saints last year. Think about how many players they lost as that season went on. Think about all the problems they had at quarterback, receiver, offensive line. Everybody got hurt. They had nothing left by the time they got to really week 6, week 7, it felt like. So it does stand out to me that despite all those big, obvious deficiencies, the Saints were actually still just a little below average in the explosive play department. Their explosive play rate defined by this, which again is a little bit more harsh than the typical explosive play rate criteria, but it was still actually about 9.6%, which is below average, but not by as much as you would expect given how deficient the Saints personnel was. And then, again, I don't want to judge Kubiak too harshly by anything that happened last year with the Saints because the personnel was so bad. Then I looked at success rate for 2024, and the Saints were, of course, very low. They were bottom 5, down at about 40.6%. So their success rate, one of the worst. The only team that was significantly worse than the Saints by success rate was Cleveland. And by the way, this chart, ignore the y-axis completely. The y-axis is just that's defense. So that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. But looking at the explosives versus the success rate, again, it's kind of this boom or bust offense. And then I wanted to go all the way back to 2021 when Kubiak was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. I didn't want to look at Denver because he was only calling plays there for like 6 games. And I didn't think there was enough data there to really take anything away from it. But if you go to, this is 2021, and you sort by explosive play rate here, Minnesota, which was the team that he was the offensive coordinator of at the time, had the 5th highest explosive play rate in the league. There were 3 teams that had an explosive play rate of 12%. And then you had Minnesota coming in here at number 5. So they were one of the most explosive offenses in the league. You can see that everything kind of runs pretty close, honestly. But Minnesota was near the top of the league in explosive play rate. And wait for that. If you go over to RBSDM here, and you take a look at the success rate of every team in 2021, you got to go down pretty far to find the Minnesota Vikings. They're 25th. They had one of the lowest success rates in football, 41.6. Again, there was only one team really that had a significantly lower success rate, Houston. Everybody else was kind of in that, everyone else had at least a 40% success rate. Houston was basically redefining the bottom here. But Minnesota, low success rate, but high explosive rate. And again, that did not... Maybe this is something that I should have done earlier. Maybe this is something I should have done that we hired him in the offseason. I didn't. When I had the Kubiak offense in my head, I was thinking more of a consistent but kind of just churning offense that doesn't seem like what he actually gets in terms of results. And I know we're looking at a limited data set. We're looking at 2 seasons and the 2 games we played so far this year. But so far, we've been getting kind of the same thing. I mean, it's been about average consistency, I guess, but it's been not particularly notable consistency, and it's been very explosive. And think about that first game against the Niners, where we didn't have any explosive run plays at all. That's probably not going to happen again. That's definitely an aberration, and yet still we are 3rd in the league in explosive play rate. So this is definitely something that has caught my attention in a pretty significant way, and has kind of made me rethink what we're going to get out of this offense. There is going to be more variance than I was expecting, maybe, is what I'm trying to get at here. I think there's going to be a little bit more boom or bust, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but I do think we need to buckle up a little bit and prepare for the possibility of a little bit more unevenness. And hopefully by the end of the year, there's been some improvements in this area, but contrary to my surface level expectations when we first hired him, it does seem like Kubiak is somebody that kind of lives or dies by the big play. And that does stand out to me a little bit after watching the first 2 games. And again, this was not a team, other than K9, there are not a lot of guys on this team that I would expect to be big play machines. K9, absolutely. But everyone else feels more like a possession offense. Not what we're getting so far. All right. Let me know what you guys think. Just random thoughts on this Wednesday afternoon. Hope everybody has a good day. Go Hawks. More videos coming soon.